The Chargers are 2-0 for the first time since 2012. That's the Jim Harbaugh effect. And they handled business yesterday in Carolina, completely blew out the Panthers. It was never really that close outside of that first, quarter maybe. But there were still some negatives to this game, some on offense, a lot of room for improvement, even though I actually thought there was a lot of improvement from last week to this week on the offensive side of the ball. But there's still a lot of room for growth, which means, the offense can get even better. So let's just go ahead and start out with that offensive side of the ball. Quentin Johnston, breakout game yesterday. In that first touchdown that he caught, he beat J.C. Horn right off the line, who J.C. Horn, pretty physical, one of the better press man cornerbacks in the NFL. He's just struggled with injuries, but he's still a pretty good player, especially in press. But Quentin Johnston beat him off the line and then adjusted to an underthrown ball that Justin Herbert threw and then caught the contested deep ball in the end zone for a touchdown. I mean, that is almost every part of his game that we wanted to see improvement in, right? The deep ball, beating a cornerback that is lined up on the line, and then adjusting to balls and making those tough catches. Like, he did all of that. And then he also caught a second touchdown. That one was a lot easier. It was a crosser in the red zone where he just kind of sat in the soft spot of the zone. Easy touchdown for them. And even though he was wide open, he still did the right thing in his route running, which is another area that we wanted to see improvement. He just stayed in that soft spot of the zone. He had 5 catches on 6 targets for 51 yards. And then those 2 touchdowns. He was the Chargers' best receiving weapon against the Panthers, and it really wasn't that close. Although I will say that Ladd McConkey, he looked good on his 2 catches, but he only had those 2 catches. And then Will Dissly had one pretty nice 15-yard catch, and then some good short yardage pickups that are just some nice little curls over the middle. Now let's talk about J.K. Dobbins, because he is the Chargers' best player on offense so far this season, and I don't even think it's very close, and yes, that includes Justin Herbert. He has been that good. He is physical between the lines, he has great patience and vision on his runs, and he showed elite burst last week and this week, and also elite shiftiness on a couple of those plays. We also saw in this game that he can take those runs to the house when he breaks free. Wasn't able to get those runs to be touchdowns against the Raiders, and then this week he was able to get that long run for a touchdown against the Panthers. And the Raiders, by the way, if you're keeping up to date with them, they just beat the Ravens, who have a pretty good rushing attack, and they allowed less rushing yards to the Ravens than to the Chargers with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. So this rushing attack, I think it's legit. J.K. Dobbins is not only the reason that this offense is able to sustain drives the way that they have with running the ball, leaning on the run game, but he is also a valuable asset in the passing game, not as a receiver, but as a pass protector, man. He showed it last week against the Raiders, then he showed it this week. He is capable of picking up a blitzer and giving Justin Herbert the time that he needs to scan the field and complete a pass. And speaking about the running game and some pass protection, this offensive line was dominant in the run and in the pass for basically the entirety of this game. There were a couple times that Justin Herbert was under pressure. He had to move around in the pocket, scramble outside of the pocket, but that was pretty few and far between. I was happy overall with the way this offensive line played. The O-line on the ground was really dominant. They averaged 5 yards per carry, 219 total yards on the ground. That is what run game dominance looks like. And Joe Alt, he looked great again and played even better this week than what I saw last week just from watching this game on the broadcast view. But I'm going to have to go back and look at the All-22 film just to make sure that he did play better this week. So I'll have a video out on that this week, hopefully. But Rashawn Slater was so dominant as well that he was literally bulldozing guys and just eating their lunch all game. I'm not going to be surprised if Rashawn Slater has an elite PFF grade and maybe the best PFF grade this week by an offensive lineman. He was that good. And there's this stat that I want to bring up. The Chargers, they ran the ball 30 times towards his side on that left side, 162 yards and a touchdown. And then on the right side, 11 carries for 61 yards. So they knew to run the ball behind Rashawn Slater because that's how you get your running backs in open space. Now let's talk about the bad and what the Chargers can improve upon, because honestly, Justin Herbert, he was just not good in this game after not playing great in week 1 either. And he was inaccurate down the field sometimes, like on that Quentin Johnston touchdown throw. And he made some bad decisions, specifically like that one interception. That was as bad as you're ever going to see Justin Herbert. And then the fumble that he had, that was also uncharacteristic because he should have taken care of the ball better and not tried to throw it as he was heading down to the ground. I mean, it reminded me of that Will Levis play from last week. That's how turnovers happen, and that's why he fumbled. It's weird because he was so great when we were losing games with Brandon Staley and Anthony Lynn, and now we have a good coach, a good defense, a good special teams, and all this. Like, we have a kicker now and all these things, and we don't need to rely on him being this amazing quarterback to win these games, and he's now not really playing as great as we know he can be. And listen, it's not like I'm just looking at the stats here and saying he sucks or something like that. I have watched every single play of his career multiple times, at least 3 times every single play. I'm not even exaggerating. So I know what Justin Herbert is capable of. I know he's much better than what we're seeing so far this season. And I'm just hoping it's some early season rust. You know, there is this new coaching staff. He did have that injury throughout training camp, so maybe he just needs to get in the rhythm a little bit more. But it's been a bad start for Justin Herbert. But once things start clicking for him and he plays like the Justin Herbert that we know he is, because we have like 4 years of evidence of him playing really good football, that's when this Chargers offense and this really this Chargers team in general, that's when this team is going to be really scary. And also, Scott Matlock, the fullback, not the defensive lineman, he's not really that good at blocking. He tends to stop his feet, not block through guys. Like, he needs to try and run through these defenders rather than run at them and then stop as soon as he makes contact. He also isn't really like a quick guy by any means, so he has trouble at times getting to that second level and then picking up one of those linebackers. Gus Edwards, we saw him at fullback. I think there were 2 plays that he was at fullback. He had that play where Justin Herbert he had that designed run to the right side, right? He picked up 13 yards. He was the fullback there, like a leading blocker. Okay. And then on that J.K. Dobbins long touchdown run for 43 yards, he was also the fullback, the lead blocker. So, I don't know, maybe there's something there. I don't know. I wouldn't have him as the full-time fullback, I'll tell you that, because I want him also splitting carries with J.K. Dobbins. But yeah, Scott Matlock at fullback, right now, it's not really working. But I'll tell you what is working. This freaking defense, man. Jesse Minter has transformed this defense. Only 3 points allowed against the Panthers. And yes, this offense, or the Panthers offense, really not good at all. But this is what good teams should do. This is what good defenses should do. Shut out a bad team. And that is exactly what they did. You can't ask for anything more. So really, the excuse that they're not playing a good offense, I don't think it's warranted, because they did exactly what a good defense would do. And really, I thought that every single player played well on defense. I couldn't really identify anyone from this defense who stuck out as not having a good game, which is a great thing, because then that means that they are all doing their job and playing a part and making this a great defense as a whole, just as an entire unit. They all played great and cohesively. Every single one of those guys, they are fast, they're physical, they fly around, they're making gang tackles, and they play unselfish football. Like Kristian Fulton, to me, I think he actually stood out as a player that might have had the most plays on defense against the Panthers. He had a couple pass breakups on 3rd down. He played really sticky coverage while also coming down in the run game and in the quick pass game, like in the flats. He had some physicality, had discipline and wrapping up in those tackles. Not missing tackles like we've seen Asante Samuel do at points this season. But another guy that really stood out to me also was Elijah Molden, the guy that we just traded for from the Titans for only like a 7th round pick. I mean, he had an interception. We all know that. But he also had that tackle that he made over the middle. That was a violent and just a textbook tackle from him. And last week, he was the Chargers' highest graded player in coverage by PFF and the Chargers' 4th highest graded defender. I'm going to be interested to see how he graded out this week, because it looks like that trade is really paying off already. He has flashed multiple times this season already. And I guess if there's one thing that this defense could have done better, it's that the pass rush wasn't really getting consistent pressure like they were in week 1 against the Raiders, but it seemed like they were content with not blitzing too much and allowing their defense to win by playing well in the back end, playing well in coverage, relying on their defensive line just to get that pressure. They only allowed 2 first downs in the entire first half. And then in the second half, the Panthers came out of halftime with a pretty strong drive. Honestly, they had that field goal and some nice chunk plays, but they started at the Chargers' 40-yard line, and they only drove for 40 yards. So that was their best drive of the game. And the Chargers, they had 5 drives that went for more than 40 yards. So they just dominated the pace of this game, dominated the time of possession. They dominated really every aspect of this game. Also, just want to let you guys know I'm going to be out of town, so there might not be a lot of videos this week, just a heads up. But hey, man, we're 2-0. We're going to be playing the Steelers. Hopefully we can get to that 3-0 mark before we go and face the Chiefs. That's the one I'm really looking at. So I will see you guys next time, hopefully at some point later this week.